Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Asuka here, bringing to you another update for Conqueror's Blade, published by Porus Interactive, and this will be a PTR update. Some news on potential changes that might hit live, and we have two units being adjusted, being the Spartan Chosen, of course you can see on the screen, and the Sunwood Phalanx. So, Spartan Chosen, there's three changes. Spartan Vengeance cooldown is increased from 20 seconds to 30 seconds. Bloodthirst Vigor cooldown increased by 0.8 seconds. Didn't realize that they had a cooldown. Added trait Weak Spot. Damage taken from rear attacks increased by 40%. Damage taken when block broken increased by 150%. On to the Sunward's Phalanx. Base health reduced from 7,000 to 5,853. Grown health, or yeah, reduced from 70 to 58. That's a reduction of 12 points, about 300 in total, about 1,500. About 1,500. So they're going to go from probably the 10k they are currently to 8,500. I really wish they would just show us the overall stats as well. Sometimes that's a bit hard to figure out. Extended Reversal of Fate. Blue shield recovery time starts recovering after 45 seconds instead of 30. Those are the changes that are on the PTR. There is nothing else. And from this point on, it's a bit of a discussion. I'll put this out here. Each of these moves is basically a kill shot. But let's go through each of them in turn. So first of all, Spartan Vengeance cooldown increase from 20 seconds to 30 seconds. Pretty much their go-to. Their absolute strongest state is during Spartan Vengeance. Absolutely unstoppable, unkillable, and uncontested while that Spartan Vengeance is facing you and they're hitting you. There's a lot of things that are packed into Spartan Vengeance, but not related to Spartan Vengeance by itself. But there are two things that I think are majorly important. It's the recovery and the well, basically there is just one particular aspect that I think Spartan Vengeance really needs to have a look at in order to determine whether or not not determine whether or not to moderate its strength. It's the recovery. On technical fact, most of the time I probably simplify this as CCI. On a technicality, Spartan Chosen are not crowd control immune during Spartan Vengeance. They recover from CC almost every tick of the animation. They do it like 4 times. They do it like 4 or 5 times a second, and the gap between recovery states are so short that certain CCs will not, like a throw CC will not execute the entire throw animation because it's longer than their recovery frame. It's longer than the gap between their recovery frame. Now, what I want to explain here is that this is a major issue because it also gives them recovery from the block broken state. Now, what the block broken state is, it drops the block status and increases damage taken by 100%. This is not guaranteed though. There's a lot of units that might have different variables or values or like veterancy node things, but as a baseline, your block breaker unit, it takes 100% increased damage. That is kind of just the general general way this mechanic works. We're not entirely sure. Sorry, I haven't tested or checked if that's the same with Spartans. I just assume it to be so because every unit I have tested on has kind of correlated to some or work out to be some value where 100% increase starting worked out. So that's really important. The other thing is that it's very overloaded. It's got decent amount of damage, and when I say decent amount of damage, I mean in the shield bash or the spear thrust attack. When it does those, it does only four of them in total, or three of them in total, I think. It's not like a crazy amount of damage now. It's like just under 2,000 damage, and it's enough damage to be concerned, but it's no longer so high that like it's going to kill multiple units. It's only just high enough to kill most of a unit nowadays. The the attack itself is unblockable. The leap attack finisher, and then we go into the leap attack finisher. The leap attack finisher is a little bit different as well. It loses a lot of its protection, the Oath of Unity, the block status, and the attack itself. Although it deals a little bit more damage than the shield bash, it's not exactly a high amount. I think the current amount is sitting in like 2.5, maybe almost reaching 3,000. Um, it's not a crazy high amount of damage, but I feel like the leap attack is so weak now that you probably don't want to let that execute unless it's kind of like you're on the winning side and stuff. That being said, the actual changes to the cooldown kind of make no sense. The reason why it doesn't make sense is that Spartan Vengeance has an additional mechanic. It has a resource mechanic called Rage. This Rage requires you to take damage before you can use Spartan Vengeance. Now, the threshold for this is kind of wanky because, like, um, it requires you to actually take damage, not block damage, I think. So it's kind of weird. In a sense, I think. I think it's like that. Anyway, you get this rage mechanic, and then Spartan Vengeance kicks off for however long the duration. I think it was like almost 15-second duration if you also include the relief thrust. I think it's 10 seconds, 5 seconds. Yeah, you can almost it's almost like 70 or 80% uptime for Spartan Vengeance. That means you're always in your strongest state for like 80-ish% of the time. The rage mechanic itself wasn't really a limiter. And that's normally how resource or mechanics supposed to work. The cooldown just makes the rage mechanic completely redundant. And I said this before when they were first released. The cooldown should not exist as long as they have the rage mechanic. And it's kind of the same thing with the shield and spear kind of thing. Their rage mechanic itself should be a limiter, and you shouldn't need a cooldown on the ability, except for like a base cooldown to prevent some like underlying mechanical stop, which would prevent units from working properly. One of those things is obviously the 4 seconds on unit abilities, because activating unit abilities within 4 seconds of the last time you activate it actually causes the unit to bug out. Now, I'm not sure. I'm not sure like how or why that's an issue. It is just an issue. Uh, they either inbuilt a mechanic to kind of prevent abilities from going out of control, or the limiter is there because, well, yeah, of course, it's just like it's an inbuilt limiter they put there but don't know how to deal with, or they're now dealing with it. They're trying to deal with it now because they've just introduced units that were just crazy in terms of like cooldowns. Now, the reason why I say that Spartan Vengeance, that the cooldown increase is going to kill the unit is because if you're not in Spartan Vengeance or you don't have Spartan Vengeance available, you're basically a dead unit. No one's going to use Spartan Chosens as a traditional shield unit because you're not tanky, first of all. You can get away with you can get away with a little bit of tankiness using No Mercy, but the problem with No Mercy is that um, you have to put yourself vulnerable first. So you're vulnerable first for a few seconds, you form up formation, you're really strong, and then it stops. Once that Oath of Unity kicks in, I mean, like, once of that Oath of Unity wears off, your formation is basically the most vulnerable thing out there because it's just really easy to beat on for heroes to beat up enemy formations, especially if they're super dense. Now, this has to do with kind of like my understanding and my thinking of how these things work. Spartan Chosen are statistically weak. What I mean by that is you take their base state, 16,000 health, around about 500, 600 armor, I believe. That's not actually high. They don't actually have any innate damage reductions. There's a couple of damage reductions in their nodes. I think it's like 9% against melee damage, and while in, or like, um, I think it's like 9% melee damage, but it's actually not that tanky as a whole. So the unit itself underperforms as a baseline, but its abilities kind of pushes it up there. Now, the reason why it's good that it underperforms is because of the Bloodthirsty Vigor. I can get onto that in a second, but it starts to overperform when it doesn't adhere to very basic mechanic principles. Block is a mechanic that is very easy to get wrong. And what I mean by that is you have situations where units that are CC immune and have block are virtually unkillable. And that's the kind of the case with Spartan Chosen. Now, I'm going to be honest here. You remove the block from Spartans, and they're weak. They're super weak. They're easy to kill. The only reason that they're so hard to kill from the front, particularly, is because of their block. Their block basically never goes down unless you hit them with so many attacks that their block goes down for that brief or so many things, and you also hit them again. So units that have high hit limit, high block, and kind of just like crazy amounts of damage, units like Wu Wei, Zhuangzi Heavy Cavalry, can burst them out. It's just not. It's just not a good way to deal with the unit, though. The second part, going on to the Bloodthirsty Vigor thing, is before they were probably attacking maybe five each times a second. I feel like it probably a bit less than that, but Bloodthirst Vigor is 4% healing. I know what you're gonna say. Oh, that's not a lot. It technically is a lot, considering that now we're adding a cooldown. You compare it to something like 3% per second for men at arms. You think about this. How many times can a Spartan chosen hit within 1 second? You go top line, they probably hit maybe half a dozen times, six, maybe 8 times. Each of those hit is 4% healing. That is absolutely ridiculous. That means in 1 second, I healed around about 20%. Give or take my bullshit, whatever. you're still having to deal with at least 4% healing every time they hit. So you're having to deal. Let's think about it this way. A 4% healing on a unit that has 16,000 health um, is 600 640 health. Wow, that's not a lot since units deal like 3,000 damage. Yeah, it's not a lot. It's still something you have to account for though. Now, I don't. I feel like they should have got rid of Bloodthirst Vigor. The cooldown increase, excellent. They're it it just means that they're not healing as much. There are plenty of ways you can control healing by limiting it. And one of the things that like is the best thing to do is to moderate how fast they can heal because in ideal situations you're healing ridiculous amount while taking a lot of damage, while blocking a lot of damage, and you're like there are many times where I think I should have died, but I'm just Spartan Vengeance straight into the enemy and nothing can kill me and I'm healing more than the damage I'm taking. So any sustain type units instantly need to be balanced weaker than than their ideal state because berserkers I mean like berserkers are pretty much the very first unit that had a incredible amount of healing for such a short duration. I mean like an incredible amount of healing in a short amount of time. Have to moderate that one. Um, Obviously, the Varangian gods later on had a ridiculous threshold kind of thing. The moderation was not enough because you could spiral through your you could spam through your axe skills, not even having them proc, and it'll be like, oh, I'm just going to heal 60% health anyway. All of a sudden these things that have high health, you can't one shot them, and they'll just heal. You just try to burst them down, and it's just like, nope, they're just going to burst you down instead. So it was really bad time during the you had the Onimusha, but that was dependent on how much damage they were dealing, so it was easier to balance them because you just need to moderate the damage they dealt and the amount that they healed, but they set it to 45%. And then the Orochis as well, same deal. The Ronins never was an issue because they never dealt enough damage, nor did they have a mechanic that allows them to deal damage and heal. I'm just, yeah. So, this will kill the unit as well. The increasing the cooldown 0.8 means that hyper ideal situations are now not so ideal, and Spartans will move to move to avoid big blocks of units now. Before you would be like, yeah, let me hit that big block of unit. Now you don't want to do that because there's going to be a limit to the amount of healing you do, so you can't just roll into the enemy and just be like, I'm invincible. So we're going to get into that problem there, which again, it's like that should have been from the start. Though again, the increase in cooldown on Spartan Vengeance means that you got a lot less uptime and a lot more waiting around. 30-second intervals, not particularly bad, but it's enough that you're going to get a lot of you're going to get a lot more timing issues that you're either late or you're out of position or you don't have it up. So that's going to happen a lot more because I think it drops down. I think it drops down to like um, 40, 50% uptime, and That's not even including canceling it. So canceling it will drop that even further. Now, finally, and this is the one I probably don't like the most, is the added trait weak spot. Damage taken from rear attacks increased by 40%. Damage taken when block broken increased by 150%. The reason why I don't like this one in particular is that the weak spot shouldn't be introduced on a unit unless the unit is intended to be very strong from the front, meaning that flanking is your only option. It makes sense if that is the case, but at the same time, I don't like the premise because there is already a 50% damage increase from behind. Increasing that by an additional 40%, that means they take 90% extra damage from behind. Makes them super vulnerable, and that means pushing with Spartan Chosen in hard situations is now dead. You're not going to do it. You're definitely going to avoid situations where there's a big group of enemies, you got no one behind you to clear up your backside. So it's it's a bad idea to have something so strong from the front be so weak from behind, and especially since this is an issue where a lot of their power doesn't come with from their raw tankiness. It comes from their healing, which you've hit. It comes from their Oath of Unity during ability, and of course it comes from their block. Those three things don't matter because, first of all, if you're behind them, they're not hitting you. Second of all, if you're behind them, the shields is not engaged. The Oath of Unity is still there, but a 90% increase in damage versus a 20% decrease, probably up to 40% decrease, shared, you're going to kill the unit so fast this way that I don't think they're going to be able to blink before they die. I'm pretty sure if anything gets behind them, this is do mind that the weak spot bonus was I think it was 20% on stalwarts and paladins, and that was cut in half to 10%, I believe. They're increasing it to 40%, and stalwarts and paladins almost dropped like flies when you flank them. Spartans are not particularly tanky innately, and they're going to drop faster than any unit you've ever seen, just from a simple flank. The second part is also even worse because it only impacts their normal state more than anything. And what I mean by that is damage taken when block broken increased by 150%. I've already explained that Spartan Vengeance, you're not in the block broken status for very long. And again, only units that have hyper amounts of block break or and hit limit will be able to take advantage of that. So those units are now just going to be able to wipe you from the front. And I mean, probably didn't explain this before. The No Mercy quick formation is CC immune. So you can't get block broken while you're doing quick formation. But after that you're dead. So shield breakers are going to not only instantly break through your Spartan Chosen, because again, block break is ridiculously high, you're also taking an additional 150%. Now, if the wording is correct here, instead of taking 100%, you're now taking 250%. Again, I have to test this, and I hope I get the opportunity to test this, but 250% increased damage? My goodness, that is a lot of damage. A lot of damage increase. Like, we're talking about units that probably deal 3,000-ish damage, which are now going to deal. Hang on, give me a second. I hope I did. I hope I am I calculating this right? They're going to deal 10,500 damage. I hope that's not right. If the wording is correct here, and it's an increase, not to, but by, traditional units of will do 10,500 damage. Like I don't know if they're doing this right because like if it's only increased by 50%, if it's only increased by 50%, so they take 150 instead of 100%, then that's not as bad, but like it's still pretty uh, it's still in line with what they're currently at. So it's just like, oh god. Anyway, I feel like that second part really needs to be tested and needs to be made sure that it's not what I think it is. Because if it is, I'm going to shoot myself in the head. Because for me, the damage taken increase should be removed. Getting CC'd when you're block broken in the first place is already a huge negative because that CC amount leaves you vulnerable because you're not doing anything and the next attack just is a free attack anyway. But the reason why they have the damage increase is because once recovered again, their block is almost like, again, it's very difficult to deal with a unit that has block because a block is virtually invincible while they have block capacity. So units need to have a measure amount of block that X number of attacks will break through it, then an X number of attacks will hit them directly at a bonus because by the time they recover from the thing, they'll block again. So it's like a back and forth kind of scenario. That being said, this is way overkill. Way overkill. You could have probably only done Bloodthirst Vigor, the number two. You could have only done number two, and that would have probably balanced out the unit. And I'm not even kidding when I say that a cooldown of 0.8 would probably almost kill the unit. Probably almost kill the unit. It would definitely still be strong. It would be stronger than most. It would still be stronger than like most traditional tier fives, but you wouldn't have issues. You wouldn't have so many outlier scenarios with Spartan Chosen, it's particularly against really weak units. But you will still have that threshold limit where certain units won't deal enough damage versus how much they're healing, those kinds of things. So I just want to say these changes, all of them are going to kill the Spartan Chosen. If they do go through, their Spartan Vengeance will still be very strong, but it's going to be kind of relegated to a one-hit wonder kind of thing. While they're pushing with the Spartan Vengeance, you got one opportunity to make a difference. Spartan Chosens won't make a difference anymore. That Spartan Vengeance is your only opportunity because you'll only be able to get one Spartan Vengeance off, and they're basically glorified IPGs now. It's sad that they've done this, and I don't believe that they should do this. Not all of this, at least. And I think they should address the issues with the unit itself, and definitely walk back at least point one and point three. Point three in particular, the second part. I can live with the damage taken from rear increase by 40%. I cannot survive 150% increase from when you're block broken. it's it's impossible because yeah, it's just impossible because you're going to be in your normal state probably around about 40 to 30-ish% of the time. You can kind of wiggle around the no mercy quick formation thing and the Spartan Vengeance, but you're just gonna have that 10 or 15 seconds of vulnerability where you're gonna get rolled in instantly by any unit with a measure of block break. And trust me, when I say measure amount of block break, I'm pretty sure that Phalanx has enough block break to kill you. I'm pretty sure. Um, Phalanx has quite a high amount of block break, but don't quote me on that. It's it's bad. This is bad, and I don't think it should have been taken this far, or at least not in this direction. But what do you guys think about the Spartan Chosen? What did you guys think was the major issues with the Spartan Chosen? Again, like I can repeat myself and say that like I don't like the CC recovery on their Spartan Vengeance. I don't like the healing. Their damage and their tankiness is not really an issue for me. I just think that there is mechanical problems with how block and CCI interacts, and they need to fix that or figure out a way to accommodate it. And of course, um, the rage mechanic for Spartan Vengeance, it's completely redundant. I think they should, if they're going to increase the cooldown to 30 seconds, they should remove the rage mechanic. It's absolutely pointless for it to exist, except for the fact that you need to take a little bit of damage before you can start using Spartan Vengeance, which is really stupid because you designed this unit to fight on the front lines for a little bit and then start a counterattack, but you can't. So what you end up doing is running around this unit, waiting for someone else to tank the front line, and then use your counterattack. So it's it's all around really weird, really weird. And very just quick note, Sunwind's Phalanx shouldn't have been nerfed this way. The survivability was not an issue at all. I don't think them being really difficult to kill is the issue. It's their scaling. I mean, their survivability is part of it, but their long reach is probably the one and only thing that needs to be accommodated. So again, I'm gonna just repeat what I said before. Fix not fix, but address their flexibility and adaptability. Get rid of instant brace. Don't let players press the brace button V and they instantly brace. You have that animation for a reason, and well, I mean, it looks cool, but for all intent and purposes, every single player doesn't even acknowledge it and just circumvent it. Second of all, get rid of the turn rate, or at least slow it down. You have Fort Horacios. You saw what was the issue back in Scorpio when they had a high turn rate. Get rid of it. Make it the same as Fort Horacios, or um, I said get rid of it already. So don't let them turn or make it as slow as Fort Horacios. It will kill the unit, but it's better than reducing their health. I think the direction they're going is terrible and definitely would not be my choice on how to address this issue. I will also add the blue shield. I've been having this argument with a couple of guys on the PTR about how the blue shield interacts with caltrops from the musket. The bleed previously depleted the blue shield. You used to be able to caltrop a phalanx and their blue shield would disappear instantly. At some point, the blue shield no longer got eliminated by caltrops. I tested this a really long time ago. People are telling me that you can still get rid of blue shield using caltrops. I am honestly at a point where I'm just like, do I need to test this again? Because I don't think anyone else have either realized or people just didn't notice. But I feel like they have fixed the blue shield being depleted by dots, and that shouldn't be an issue. Though the low health will push Phalanx into one-shot zone for Shenji. It's one-shot zone. I don't believe it's a guarantee. I think it's enough where you're going to just go to healing. Well, if you got hit by Shenji anyway, you would go to healing anyway because like your unit was, I'm pretty sure your unit was 70, maybe 80% dead. I think you were only living with like a sliver of health, if I kind of remember correctly. But regardless, I do think personally, Sunway's Phalanx needed to be addressed. It is one of the most overrepresented units, and I'm just saying cavalry existence doesn't justify Sunward's Phalanx from being as strong as they are. Because it's not them being good against cavalry that's a problem, it's them being good against everything else. They're okay against range because, again, they're a traditional infantry unit with normal amounts of health. You're still going to get shot to pieces, but you're much better at tanking hits, and you have a shield. That shield only covers your left side, but you still have a shield. So you're blocking something. Not a lot, but you're blocking something. Probably in the low 30, maybe 40% of hits, depending on angles as well. But regardless of all of that, I feel like people want Sunward's Phalanx to stay strong. Because once Sunward's Phalanx goes weak, Cavalry is going to go free yet again. Because no one's going to bring Phalanx. And that's one of the things you want to kind of avoid, is when no one brings anti-cav units. Because cavalry is designed so badly, so poorly, so unforgiving. You either bring a dedicated anti-cavalry unit, or you use your hero to deal with cavalry. That is the only two ways you deal with it. Otherwise, like, you can sort of counter, well, not counter cavalry. You can sort of just deal with cavalry if you're smart. But it's very difficult. It's very difficult. The cavalry has so many edges, so many advantages against anything else beside dedicated anti cav units that I don't believe that they're balanced, even if they are currently weak in the meta. I definitely think that like stuff stuff as simple as the Corteliers are OP. I think the Corteliers are OP. The Iron Scouts definitely OP. Um, Range cavalry, however, again, they're weak because they don't output damage, but they're annoying to deal with. But Vanguard archers are basically better at mobile ranged unit than they are, so that's really funny. Regardless, I feel this was a miss, a massive miss with the changes, and I really think that they should go back to the drawing board and not implement these changes. But let me hear what you think. What do you think are the current issues? Do you think we should go fix up tier 3s again, like we did last PTR, or keep addressing the tier 5 only, the meta stuff? Because I feel like people think that meta is way more important than anything else. And I kind of understand that. High tier units are just the units you're going to see the most because they're the high tier units. And lower tier units don't matter. Only tier 4 and tier 5 really matter. Tier 3, basically not even a concern. It can be unbalanced as shit. I mean, current tier 3 experience, Prefecture Guards and Condottierias. Absolutely wrecking my shit. Do I like it? Absolutely not. But then we also have a buttload of cavalry just running me over as well. So, I don't know. I feel like this game is progressively getting worse in very silly ways. They they refuse to fix uh, they refuse to fix issues that I have brought up and continue to go in a direction where it makes no sense to me. Well, I could make it make sense, but I don't want to. Uh, well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know it was mostly a discussion. It took me like 5 minutes to go through the update, but nevertheless, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Other than that, my name's Eska. Have a nice day. Bye for now.